ArenaNet has accidentally trolled every single hardcore PvE player in the game. All right? So, let's dig into it and talk about it. We can talk about this now. So, let's go over to the game update notes, guys. And I'll just go through all of it. We're going to go through everything because, oh boy, have we got a wild, wild ride. So we actually start out very, very strong. There's a lot of very cool stuff here. Of course, we have the Festival of the Four Winds being added in there as well. There's all the usual stuff being returned. I believe there are actually a few new skins to unlock. Fantastic. We absolutely love to see that, guys, okay? Incredible. Really cool stuff here with the World Polish as well. Actually, the Twisted Marionette, right, is in here. So, you know, you can actually now have the public version back instead of just the private. That makes it a lot more accessible to everyone. And they actually made some really nice quality of life there as well. It won't start until there are 50 people in the map, in the public. And in the private, the commander actually has to start the event there as well, which is actually really nice. Nice tech that they can actually make something that only the commander can actually use it to. I like that a lot. That's going to be way more convenient. It means you can actually squad up while you're in the instance instead of having to awkwardly be outside the instance, squatting up, then go in, right? A little bit annoying. They fixed a bug. Boom, 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 boom. That's how it is. And actually, it's kind of a fun thing. The Gold Claw Holiday Collection, which is actually going to be like a hidden series of festival-themed novels, which I believe may well be, okay, very risque, in fact, so definitely go check that out there as well, guys. Go and find all those novels and locate those things real quick. And so, yeah, good news, guys. Marionette a lot more accessible. You're probably going to see that run a lot more frequently in public meta trains, that sort of stuff. And you can waste all of your gold gambling for an infusion in the Festival of the Four Winds. I wouldn't recommend you guys do that. You'll lose all your gold, and you won't win any of the carneurs. Unlucky, dude. However, now we get to the source, my friends, okay? The juicy stuff. A few little bug fixes here. Nice and possible odds will work on Tequaddle. Hey, who knows? Maybe they'll eventually make it so Set to 3 on Necromancer works on stuff, and targeting in general is good. Really nice fix here as well. So Might Deadeye might be much more of a thing now, actually, because Fire for Effect actually properly prioritizes the boon output, which is actually really, this is great. I love this. I think this is such a really cool build, like Might Deadeye, and now Might and Fury Deadeye, 10 target Might and Fury on Deadeye is actually very, like, bam, like, whoa, whoa, yeah. Lock that in, right? That's going to be rock solid 10 target, 25 Might and Fury. Honestly, pretty cool stuff. I love to see that. Okay, then you got the stuff in the gem store. There's stuff in the gem store, blah, 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 right? But let's get to the juice. Let's get to the meat. ArenaNet has accidentally trolled every single hardcore PvE player in the game. All right? So, let's dig into it and talk about it. To improve the stability of the game, performing any of the following actions will reset your status. Removing ongoing skill effects, such as damaging area effects, traps, preparations, missiles, and many boons, and profession-specific enhancements. See, this process will clean up many possible broken states in which a skill effect will be present where it should not have been. Some of these states cause duplication of performance-intensive skills, such as traps, which degraded server performance for everyone. So, this is actually true, by the way. This is a very true statement, and this is why it's a bit of a difficult thing. This is much more of a... Oh, no, Grimjack is here. Oh, no. He's going to pop off, guys. I cannot be responsible for Grim. He's going to activate, guys. Like, I can guarantee you he's active currently. But, well, we'll get into that a little bit later. You guys should run and hide. Anyway, so... here's the problem, and why this is definitely a nuanced issue. Okay? This is not entirely a bad idea. Like, precasting traps, preparations, right? Even AoEs. You could argue that's kind of dumb, right? That probably is pretty unhealthy for the game, and it was stupid, right? This is particularly a problem in Fractals, right? Where you precast, Ashes of the Just, every boon in the game, right? All this kind of stuff. This is absolutely a legitimate issue that I'm not really a big fan of. But here's the thing. This was not the target of this change. Notice that, guys. This is not the target, right? They very clearly stated that server performance was the target. And funny enough, this doesn't even actually fix precasting that badly. It fixed some of, like, the really, really abusive stuff, right, in the game, right? What's going on here? You know, like, you can being able to precast, like, loads of unique modifiers and then swap your build so you don't have that anymore. I think that's fair. That's a fair change. But the fact that it removes literally everything, right, is a bit of a troll. And it is true that I think a lot of players were complaining about this in GVG and World vs. World, where you can do some really degenerate stuff by doing this. Precasting boons, precasting unique modifiers, using abilities and swapping out. This actually caused a lot of problems in World vs. World. And this definitely addresses that, actually. So this is not a wholly bad change, because what's going on here is this essentially makes it so that any kind of movement-based speedrun gets screwed over very, very hard. And let me go ahead and explain why. So right now, I've got my Spectral Walk, right, on my Necromancer. So if I go ahead and, you know, I'm going to just go ahead and equip a different weapon, right? So if I use Spectral Walk right now in the game, I'm going to get Swiftness. So I'm going to run around. But wait, hang on a minute. If I equip a Dagger, for example, right, or, you know, my Swiftness is gone. Weirdly enough, the Spectral Walk just doesn't work, actually, weirdly enough, I think. But, you know, that effect stays there. But the Swiftness is now gone. Okay? And here's where I guess I slightly disagree, okay, with this change. I honestly think, get rid of unique mods. Yeah. I think that's fair. I actually think that's not fair. That's fair to do that. But I think the real issue here is that removing boons is weird, okay? Like, that is not a very good change here, right? I actually think that, this might be a hot take here, actually, but I think in terms of dungeons, I actually think that changing your weapon out of combat is actually intentional. All right, maybe not intentional, but it's a side effect of the game that doesn't really do any harm, right? In my opinion, anyway, right? So let's go ahead and log over, and we can kind of see an example of this. So if I go to my warrior over here, right, we can go ahead and take a look at something that you might go ahead and do to do this, right? So, you know, actually, no, I think Ellie is actually a better example of this, funnily enough, because Ellie, obviously, you're going to use very different weapons to go ahead and move around there as well. But, you know, like, if you go over here, right, you know, to the warrior, right, if you're in, say, in a dungeon run or something like that, like, a lot of the time, you want to get around the place quickly, right? So what you might go ahead and do is that you might start off with one weapon set, and you'll swap to another, right, when you actually get there. And yeah, if you like Ellie Might set there as well, it's honestly not great, guys, okay? It's not what you want to see. Yeah, and, well, that's the thing. I don't disagree that it does cause a lot of issues in World versus World. But again, you know, if you're in a PvE speeder environment, right, you might swap to Warhorn to give yourself some swiftness, right? And then you'll swap it out, right? So, you know, you might, I don't know, do I actually have another weapon here? Just for the sake of argument, we'll swap out to a mace or something like that. So, you know, if we have this here, right, you know, we're going to go crazy. You know, we'll be using our Warhorn ability, and then we're going to swap it to a mace after this, right? So you might, like, toot the horn for a bit of swiftness, like leap around. You know, you're doing a dungeon run, right? You're going really fast, right? You're going crazy. But now, when you go back to your other weapon, right? Oh no! Ah! My swiftness is gone. And honestly, I actually think this will be a really good idea for a change like this to actually be, to an extent, split. Right, I don't know how hard that will be to do. In fact, I think they might not be able to do that. But I agree, in GVG, this is a really big problem because you can precast boons to a really disgusting level. Because what you can do is you can, you know, you can even do this with different mechanics, right? Because what people were doing is that they were on core guard, right? They'd use all their virtues to apply all the boons, do all the empowering, right? Use all their boon abilities, right? And then immediately swap off something else, and you're starting the fight with, like, perma-million boons, right? All this kind of crazy stuff, and then you can swap after that, right? Okay, and then you can go and play Firebrand. And in fact, you could actually use your Guardian F1 virtues, and go immediately into Firebrand with 0 cooldown. Now, I don't disagree that that's a problem. Then fix that, right? Make it so that when you swap, those mechanics are on cooldown, right? Instead of just saying, you know what, we're going to hack job this and remove all boons and all interactions from different weapon sets and using different weapons, which is a very kind of core part of the way PvE was played. And honestly, I think not that obnoxious, to be honest. I think stuff like Again, if we go to Mesmer here, I think stuff like this, where you like put a focus down and then swap to a sword, I think that's completely harmless, right? I think that's absolutely zero issue, because you're not in combat doing that. All you're doing is saying, right, we're going to put down a swiftness AoE, everyone's going to run through it, and then I'm going to change my weapon. I don't think that's actually a big problem. Like, what ArenaNet is saying here is that if you want to use this weapon, you are forced to use it for the entire duration of a combat, right? So if I put on my focus here, ArenaNet is saying if I want to use this ability, I have to use this not only for the duration of getting value out of it, so going to here, I have to use it until I am at a different segment. Because bear in mind, guys, you don't just lose that boon, right? So if, for example, we give ourselves some quickness and alacrity here, right? We're just going to give ourselves some boons, right, by doing this. And then we go ahead and put our focus down. If then you go ahead and swap to a different build template. So here we go. We're going to use our swiftness, run through it. You don't just lose that. You lose everything. It is all gone. Every boon you have, not just the one associated with that weapon, not just the one associated with that that build template, you lose absolutely everything. This just gives the player so much less flexibility when you're approaching something, and it removes, like, irrelevant stuff from the game, right? That's how it always should have been. I actually don't agree with that. I think that this idea that you could use different weapons to do this is actually a pretty good idea, right? It's a pretty elegant solution to actually having like a bit more interesting skill to the game, and also a bit more flexibility in the approach you can take, given how limited the weapons actually are in the game, right? And the other problem is the implementation of this isn't very good. So let's take a look here. If I go ahead and this is another issue entirely. If I go ahead and drop this alacrity well here, let's go ahead and take a look at this, guys. Notice that when this happens, this player is going to get alacrity. If I swap, they don't lose it. So that's another really big issue with the implementation. I lose the boon, right? But they do not. So you can still kind of do this in a very, very weird way, but you can kind of get around it like that. It just removes a bit of skill. It just removes skill expression from the game. And you could argue that it is a bit gimmicky. It definitely is. But if you wanted to remove all of the gimmicky stuff in the game, well, I have some bad news for you, okay? There's a hell of a lot of like very, very gimmicky stuff in the game that would also probably have to get the axe there as well. Okay, so that is a bit of an issue indeed, right? And I think it is a little bit sad because, again, I don't think that this is a problem. Like doing this, right, and then running through it and then swapping to another weapon, I don't really see that as an issue. I see that as just like a little trick you can do to make things a little bit better and get value out of your knowledge and different abilities within the game, right? Again, if you could do that in combat, that would be a really big issue. I don't disagree that it does cause issues in game modes like World versus World. That's definitely a big problem. Like the pre-stacking boon stuff is pretty degenerate, especially when you combine it with build templates, because you can do it so quickly. But that's an issue with build templates, right? You could do a whole bunch. You could have an internal cooldown on it, for example, on swapping. You could make it so that when you swap, it sets all your abilities on cooldown, right? So, for example, when I swap over here, if I use all of my skills like this, guys, let's go ahead and use our Chronomancer abilities. If I go ahead and do this, right, when I swap to Mirage, right, see what's happening there? It in some ways, it doesn't even fix this, right? Because now I get all my shatters back. They can make it so that, okay, if I'm going to swap, right, to a Chronomancer, then all these cooldowns are going to be carried over instead, right? So instead of being reset like they are now, if I go ahead and use all my skills, right, and this will still work on Firebrand, right? Although I guess you won't get as much value out of it because you won't be able to pre-stack, but you can see here, right? I can immediately use all my other skills when I go to Mirage, right? I just get all of them back instantaneously. So this isn't really a complete solution to the problem, right? And to be fair, ArenaNet weren't even necessarily targeting this problem either, right? They said that it's to do with server stability, which I think is a very noble cause there too. But I think it is definitely worth noting that this does have some very negative impacts on a selection of the player base that is incredibly dedicated to the game, and will absolutely limit these players in how far they can push the game, particularly with regards to speedruns. Speedruns are definitely a big kind of add a little bit of threat here, really, because it means that players are going to have to really commit to these weapons to use these abilities the entire time. Which, hey, if that's the way ArenaNet wants it, then that's the way they want it, I guess. And ultimately, that's entirely their decision. But I don't really agree that the idea of being able to do this was very harmful to the game. And pre-stacking is, but this isn't actually addressing pre-stacking whatsoever. It doesn't actually change that. If you want to address pre-stacking, I think that's completely fair, right? Okay, it's completely fair if you want to address pre-stacking, but this doesn't do it, right? You can still do it, in fact, very effectively, right? The only difference is that if you want to go for speedrunning, this really screws you over, right? They'll carry on playing and get over it, almost certainly, right? Everyone who said they're going to quit will come back. Grim, he said he was going to quit over the previous change involving weapon swapping. He was back within hours. Okay, I love Grim, okay, but I saw that one coming, right? And realistically, these guys aren't going to quit. They're going nowhere. They're addicted to the game, okay? It's not going to happen, right? Okay, you know, it's going nowhere. But yeah, and you know, so it's not really going to affect anything. But it's not. The thing is, it's a change, okay? It's a change that affects an incredibly small amount of, a very small amount of people. So yeah, sure. Like, is it the craziest deal in the universe? Yeah, but it's a small deal until you get hit by something like this, right? There's something that screws you over. And yeah, there are also some other, like, negative side effects to this too. Like, it doesn't just remove Aegis, right? It doesn't just remove, like, the boon that weapon applied. If they could code it so it removed just the boon that weapon apply, I mean, that would be a little bit better, I think. But as of right now, if I use some quickness here, right? We're going to use all of our might. If I change even a single trait on my build to this, pow, right? Dead, right? So if I change even one trait, it annihilates it. And yeah, stealth doesn't get removed right now. It's kind of a bit of a mistake, I think. I think that's unintentional, right? Which is not good, in my opinion. So I think this is something that could be made into a good change. But as of right now, I think the implementation is not there. So to kind of underline it, I would get... Yeah, I know. That's the other really weird part. Look, check this out, guys. I showed this earlier, but we'll show it again. If I give this guy boons, right, and then I swap... He gets the boons! So there are a few problems with this implementation, guys. Okay, you know, it's not exactly finished. I think the philosophy behind this idea, right, is actually a good one. It's trying to prevent pre-stacking, and obviously, you know, server stability is always a good thing. The problem is that, one, this doesn't actually address pre-stacking very well at all. It actually just makes it more annoying to do, but you still have the cooldown reset with the singularity. You can still do whatever you want, right, and go crazy. Doesn't really address pre-stacking in any kind of meaningful way. It does make World vs. World strictly better, because like there was like really dumb stuff. I'll show it to you now, guys, right? So what you can do right now is you can play core, right? And you can spam all your virtues, and then you could go ahead and swap to Firebrand. And look, I have all my terms. I've got all my terms here, so I can immediately go in. This actually is a very good change for World vs. World. It means you can't pre-stack a billion everything in the game, right? And then swap to Firebrand and then have your abilities. That's a good change. Straight up. Zero issue. That's a good change. 100%. That makes World vs. World better. There's no question about that. Okay? However, in PvE... this is a change that I don't think is very good, actually. I think it's not a very good implementation of this approach, particularly seeing as PvE is not about just do trash, AFK, kill boss. PvE, I think, should be fluid. And I think I speak for the dungeon community here, and probably the speedrun community, indeed, with regards to dungeons, fractals, and raids, funnily enough. PvE is supposed to be, well, at a high level, is fluid. And this shatters that fluidity, right? It shatters the idea that everything is a continuous encounter. It says, right, that, segment, oh, I put not more to it, segment. And I think that feels very, very disjointed for a lot of high-end PvE players, because this basically enforces this segmented gameplay and removes the fluidity between the different sections of an encounter or a dungeon of some kind, right? Which I think negatively affects the way that even relatively high-end players are going to engage with this content. it affects fractal pre-stacking in the sense that you can't stack profession modifiers, right, a little bit. But the thing is, it doesn't affect it that much. You can still use the singular. You can still pre-stack everything and reset all of your cooldowns, right? You can still pre-stack Dragon Hunter traps, right? You can still pre-stack certain AoEs and then reset immediately with the singularity. In fractals, it doesn't really affect it because fractals are broken, okay? Hot take there, right? So fractals are just busted straight up. So that is not really significantly affected there as well. But, oh yeah, and you can also do it on your team. I imagine that's a little bit unintended there. And also, this kind of in a way confirms what that, that boons aren't an issue. Because I was saying here that, like, basically these broken states are only really affected by what their player character has. They're obviously not concerned about giving boons to someone else, right? Okay, because these boons, they're obviously not causing the servicing. So I think the very simple thing is, in PvE, make it so that this doesn't affect boons, right? Okay, and then I think you're good to go. I think that would be an acceptable compromise for everyone involved. It will still prevent these broken states, right? Because of all the busted profession mechanics and weird things where you can have like Core Shroud on Scourge, all this bizarre stuff that you can do with the build templates and all this kind of weird stuff. I think it would prevent that, and it also just makes everyone happy, right? Because it's very clearly not boons, right? Not so to remove boons from people. Yeah, I know. But, like, clearly, like, boons, maybe not a big deal. And I imagine that having boons on yourself and then swapping to a different build, probably not a big deal, right? Okay, I think what they're really trying to attack here is weird things happening with profession mechanics, right? Like, bizarre things going on there, where you've got, like, multiple profession mechanics going on at the same time, right? Unique effects, unique modifiers, traits going on, like, weird stuff here, weird stuff there. That's clearly what they're trying to attack it, and I think that's a fair thing to attack. I don't disagree with it. Once again, philosophy of the change, zero issue with it. But I think the implementation, it's a little bit too ham-fisted, a little bit too much of a bull in a china shop, right? That is the news, guys. Enjoy the news. That's how it goes. Boom. Boom. Big news. Go waste all your money in Festival of the Four Winds, guys. Because look, there's going to be a lot of, a lot of sad players drowning their sorrows in the festival, gambling, praying for a little bit of juice, okay? They've got nothing left in dungeons. Now they've got to waste all their gold trying to gamble for rare infusions. There it is, okay? Like...